Hello, welcome to another video, and this is going to be a raid boss tier list. Going to be ranking all of the Borderlands and Wonderlands raid bosses on an S through D. I would suggest that there isn't much space between these categories since they're all ultimately enjoyable in some capacity. None of them are truly bad. Well, maybe that one, but none of them are truly bad. But it's just my thoughts on how well I think each of the boss fights was designed in just terms of their mechanics, their attack patterns, the arenas that they're in, just how deep they are. Yeah, and how they ultimately play out in game as well. So that's kind of what I'm going to be basing it on, and obviously it is opinion based. If you think I'm wrong and just the worst person imaginable for putting Dexi in bad, spoilers, I know, and let me know. But I'm going to start with Pyro Pete. I did the video on Pyro Pete recently, talking about his mechanics. Very in-depth. Unfortunately, the core moveset of Pyro Pete does let it down. Also, story boss rehashed into a raid boss. Big points lost there. Very just middle of the pack, like as 50-50 as you can get, I think, for Pyro Pete. Chromax, though, first time of asking, they nailed it. The first raid boss that they did, absolutely brilliant. The ads that are in the arena that have got an individual elemental weakness, and then the boss itself, meaning you're utilizing all 4 weapon slots, which is something that they've struggled with since. The arena's fine, accessible to all of the playable characters, open to lots of different weapons to be used. Yeah, brilliant fight. It's not over in a few seconds. The health bar is drawn out in a way that even if you've got lots of damage, you're not going to kill it in a few seconds because you've got the different body parts. But it's not immunity phases, so it feels more natural, and it's just great. And of course, a skill player can take down Chromax very quickly. That is skill. Again, just brilliant depth there. S tier boss. Bunny Hog, an entry from Wonderlands, and Wonderlands did these aspect bosses quite well, and Bunny Hog is no exception. It's one of the most grandiose raid bosses, the whole weather effect, the huge arena, needing to shoot kind of the lighthouse eye thing, very clear what you have to do. And there's very little complaints on this fight. Like, okay, the ads are quite accurate with their guns, I guess. And also the hitbox of hitting the lighthouse eye when it's slithering away from you is annoying. But that's such a minor thing. Yeah, this is just a great fight, Bunny Hog. And that's cool boss. Dexi was amazing. Brilliant idea, loved it, all the way up until it actually spawns. And then it's just downhill from there. The idea of having a boss fight in a large map with vendors, respawns, vehicles, all that, awesome. I want them to re-explore that idea. Just Dexi themselves wasn't engaging at all. Yeah, no. I'm joining Dexi. I'm sorry. Dragons, they just don't work. They're really annoying. They're really annoying. You know, that you shoot them to make them land, but then they just won't land, or they'll land and they'll take off. So the mechanic there just doesn't work. They've got all 4 of them just have undodgeable attacks, you know, especially Heliant with the Latchion laser. That's annoying. And undodgeable attacks can work in a one-on-one scenario, where you can focus on healing through this one attack. But when you've got 4 of them, there's no organization there. It's just too messy. Especially when one decides to land underground. Had that happen a few times. Yeah, no. I can see why you might put it a bit further up. It's a very grandiose looking fight. It's cool looking, but it feels good to beat them. But to me, that's more of a relief rather than a feel good. So yeah, dragons, I don't like dragons. Glooper's cool, relatively interesting, just not very engaging to my mind. The fight opens up, you have to dodge 2 attacks, both of which you can dodge by standing still. Then he reiterates the mechanic that you do to spawn him, and then that's it. That's it. That's where the fight ends. He stuns, all the enemies on the map just despawn, you shoot him in the weak point for a bit, and then he gets up, and then you repeat from that point. very little depth. The arena's cool. It pushes you to move around the arena if you do have a longer fight, and you do have the dynamic of like trying to make sure you've got a build that can 1-phase, 2-phase, or 3-phase, whichever milestone is good for you. So that's fun. It's not necessarily a bad fight, it's just not great. Very middling. Scorch. Now that is a great fight. Scorch, a couple of cool attacks. The arena is brilliant with the pillars and how the longer the fight goes, the more pillars Scorch can break, which means the less cover you have when Scorch does the supernova. But you can use the diadems to stun him out of the supernova. Then Scorch teleporting you to different rooms. Very cool. I like that, especially when he splits up the entire team. So if you're on a team of 4, you each get sent to your own room, which means you have to put an individual performance in to carry on your contribution to the fight, and it might just end there for you if you're not good enough. It's happened to me during a challenge run. I was like, right fellas, this is the end of the road for me, good luck. And then, the people I'm playing with had to clutch up. But that's done at the end of the fight, so it's not too punishing. Yeah, Scorch, lots of cool ideas. It's annoying that you can do most of the fight with just the diadems, but yeah, it's still a great fight. Like Scorch a lot. They did good with Scorch. Hyperius, another fantastic fight. The robots shielding Hyperius, and then you can either take down the robots one by one, giving you a smaller damage window on Hyperius, or you can group them together with singularities, damage them all at the same time with the AoE, and then you get a longer damage window for Hyperius. And then 2/3 of the way through the health bar, it changes. No longer gets the overshield, and instead gets bigger, more aggressive. The fight changes, he enrages, but he's not too tanky. It's about a 2.5, 3, 4 minute fight with a solid build. Very good fun. And then you've also got some fun, interesting speedrun strategies as well. Yeah, Hyperius, I think, is one of Borderlands 2 S tier fights. Just really good. Eos. Now, a while ago I did a poll, does Eos count as a raid boss? And it was 51% in favor. So, barely considered to be a raid boss. But, majority says yes. Story boss rehashed, not too interesting. The first phase against the suit was cool, but then the space station, less so. The immunity phases are very long and drawn out. There's no interaction on them. It doesn't demand the player do anything. There's no way to speed it up. You actively don't actually have to do anything. It's just to survive during the immunity phases, and they are very long. Yeah, lacks a lot of depth. It's not terrible, but it's not something I'd consider raid standard. One thing I would consider raid standard, though, is Anathema. Anathema's awesome. The immunity phase on Anathema is done well, because it's short, and it forces you to use the arena to work out the puzzle of the bubbles, and be on the right platform to avoid them. The problem is there's so many of them. Too many of them. They could have cut the amount of them in half. It's still a cool mechanic, but we didn't need 11. We did not need 11. Bottom of B tier. Not a bad fight. Could be improved by removing some of the immunity phases. The immunity phases themselves were cool, but and the fight would be very one-dimensional without them. Made good use of that awesome arena. Really cool arena. Yeah, but not on the tier of Scorch. Barkenstein. Another one of Wonderlands' entries. Barkenstein was cool. You had a unique mechanic here with parrying. So Barkenstein had 3 core attacks, each of which you could do a specific thing that was different for each one to dodge them, or you could parry them. So claw attack, you crouch. Tail attack, you jump. He jumps in the air, you either back out of there, or if you're too close, you run behind him and he lands behind you, you spin around, you carry on the fight. And then you can parry each of those. If you parry them a lot, he goes in rage and you can't parry them, so you're forced to learn each of the dodge counters. Very involved fight. Can be very overwhelming at first, crazy, but once you figure it out, there's nothing Barkenstein can do to you. Very satisfying. Yeah, S tier. Maybe top of A, I could see that. I could see top of A. But for me, S tier. Good fight, Sparkenstein. Vorak, well, for me, that's S tier, but, I'm not that biased. Voracitus is brutal. It's punishing, exceedingly difficult, annoyingly dragged down by a bug with Fight for Sanctuary doubling its health bar. Hyperius had the same, but it wasn't as damaging for Hyperius, and it was damaging for Vorak. I don't want to hold that against him. You can say it's a bit unfair to dragons, but dragons don't matter when you're fighting them. They just suck. Vorak's a UVHM only bug, and it is purely health, and not actual the functionality of the fight. In terms of the functionality of the fight, very good. Very, very robotic, rigid in his attack pattern. You can predict what Vorak's going to do well ahead of time once you've learned this fight. And that's what I love about Vorak, is at first it seems like this crazy chaos that is just insurmountable. But eventually, he just becomes your pet. You know what he's going to do. Maybe that's not... Yeah, pets act erratically, don't they? No, yeah, but... Anyway, Vorak is cool. Very satisfying to learn. Dragged down by the Chief. The Chief is a mechanic where they swap the shields back and forth, and I think it does worsen the fight. The Chief's got this undodgeable laser thing that latches onto you. Most people who fight Vorak on a regular basis will just kill the Chief at the start with a Trespasser and have done with it and just fight an enraged Vorak for the entire fight, and it's a lot more fun that way. I'm going to put it in great. I know some people will be down, bad, terrible, unfair, but I'm going to put it in great. I think it's a good fight. Good fight. In a game with so many raid bosses, Gearbox can afford to take a risk and have a boss that's like, this is not a boss most people will be able to beat. But that's okay, because if you work at it enough, you can beat it, and it's an achievement. It's that final boss of final bosses. That's why I like Vorak. If they were all safe and easy to kill, it'd be boring. But not Vorak. Vorak's not boring. Another one that's not too boring, at least at first, Hadorax. Hadorax I like. Hadorax has got quite a bit of depth, you know, when he jumps between the two holes. If you go to the third one, he can... Yeah, jumps between the two holes, you go onto the one he jumped from, and then when he comes up in the third hole, you get launched up onto a platform and you can shoot him in the weak spot behind, which stuns him, giving you a damage window. That's loosely how that went. Bit of depth there. And then, of course, he's healing where he goes, he's like busted out of the walls, going back in, and you have to quickly apply statuses, any status, to Hadorax to stop him from healing. Good interactive mechanic there. Yeah, and of course the soundtrack. And no, it's not part of the fight, but the soundtrack. And the loot was good too, though I'm not really judging them based on the loot because, well, some of these fights don't have loot. Hadorax, though, awesome fight. The only downside with Hadorax to me is once you've learned it, there's very little Hadorax can do to the player. You can walk in there knowing that you're going to beat it. Some of these fights, you know, Hyperius fully capable of playing and killing a knowledgeable player. Vorak the same. Pete the same. Anatha the same. Most of these can kill you, even if you know what you're doing. Hadorax, though, once you've figured this fight out, there's little he can do to fight back. But figuring it out's fun, and the fight itself is fun. Enjoy Hadorax. I think it's a great fight. Really well done on Gearbox's part there. Humorus. Humorus was the first standalone raid boss fight of Borderlands 3, and this kind of meant that Gearbox had to play it safe, so that's what they did. They did a very safe beast raid boss, which was cool, a lot more in-depth and involved than a previous Varkid raid boss. No, Hemo was alright, broad enough moveset, accessible enough to enough different characters and playstyles. Not bad, but nothing remarkable. Very, yeah, like Pyro Pete, very middling. There is an annoying bug where it goes immune for too long, but it's not game-breaking, and it really only affects speedrunners, so that's too niche to really hold against it. The Maker. I like the Maker. I think the Maker is amazing, but for the raid boss to end raid bosses in its video game, you know, you have to beat the 3 previous ones to even attempt this one. There isn't a single gear check in a looter RPG. Your build does not matter for this fight. As long as you can kill the bunny heads, which don't have much health, that's all you need. And then it's a game of jank dodgeball. That really drags the fight down. Otherwise, it's awesome. The way she rolls the dice for her attacks, and if she rolls a 1, she hits herself. And then the finale, when she goes to low health and she's sending out the nose, they have to crouch jump, and they get faster and faster. Really cool, but not feeling rewarded for my build. Bottom of B, I think. Definitely not C for needs improvement, but yeah. 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 Master Ghee. Master Ghee did some cool stuff. You could have assigned roles with Master Ghee. You could have the tank, you could have the DPS, you could have the person that soaks up a pool with a booster shield, dropping boosters everywhere. You could do cool stuff like that with Master Ghee. You also had the mechanical depth with the acid pools themselves. You could soak them up and gain a damage boost, or you could make Ghee soak them up, take a permanent dot, but then Ghee gets a damage boost. That's cool. So a Salvador will want to take, I typically give Master Ghee 3 pools, and then as Salvador, I take the rest for the damage, but it means I've got this dot on me. That's cool. Unfortunately, the fight just kind of sucks. Yeah, and you've got the big shield as well. I think the fight would have been a lot better if the first shield didn't exist. If it just started on the second shield, this fight would be so much better. I don't think it's bad. It's on the line. I'm looking at this and I'm putting Ghee above dragons, and I think, do dragons really deserve that? I don't know, but I know who does deserve it. Is that unfair? Is that unfair? The son of Chromax? Because I enjoy Chromax, I just don't think it's a very good raid boss. And it is, again, kind of like Heroes teetering on the line of a raid boss. It's Son of Chromax, it has to be. The problem is, it took everything that made Chromax good and removed it. But it's okay, because it's pretty. The arena sucks, the ads are annoying, they don't have any depth, and it's actually just straight up better to run around the edge of the arena and not engage with the ads. And the fight itself, you can do a phase of Chromax in about 10 seconds with very little effort, and then he goes underground for the next 30. Most of this fight is you running around in circles waiting for Chromax to come out of the ground, because why does Chromax need 3 or 4 30-second immunity phases? I think it's 3. Why? Why does this fight need 1.5 minutes of being immune when the rest of the fight is like 10 seconds? No. Again, on the line between bad and needs an improvement. It's fun, I guess. You don't need a beast shield for it, so that's cool. Yeah. Tera! Buddy. Pal. I know lots of people put Tera in S tier. Now, Tera has one fundamental flaw, and that's its arena. And when Tera's underground, he shakes the floor, stopping a beast shield from recharging. And then a lot of the attacks have 1 counter. How many people, as soon as they spawn Tera, run to a very particular spot on this map? Tera has got probably the most attacks out of most of the raid bosses on screen, but they all have the exact same counter. They all require the player to do the exact same thing to no longer deal with them. That's hide behind a very particular rock, and then go to another one if Tera moves to a particular location. That's the level of depth that this fight has. If you try and go anywhere else, you'll probably end up getting launched off the cliff, unless you're Krieg. Salvador doesn't strictly need to, but it's better to, because B-Shield Leadstorm just beats anything. So, yeah. I'd put it in C. I know. Rage at me. I don't care. I'll put it in B, just because it's not bad, but I also do just think Tera is lacking. Speaking of lacking in anything that resembles a fight, Vermi. Vermi's cool to get a bunch of friends together and try and spend an hour trying to spawn Vermi. That's cool. We enjoy that. We all have fond memories of doing that. Well, if you don't, you're missing out. But once Vermi spawns, it's a nothing fight. The depth of Vermi's attack patterns is more basic than the previous evolutionary forms of the Vorak. The previous ones are more interesting. Yeah, Vermi's just not good. Spawning Vermi's great, kind of like spawning everything around Dexi, but the fight itself is it's just kind of a nothing fight. But one thing that isn't a nothing fight, do I really need to say much on Wotan the Invincible? Like, do I even need to say much about Wotan? I think Wotan's probably the best raid boss that they've ever made. Like, if you were to do a top 3, I simply just think you put Wotan as number 1. Like, it's really good. It does everything well. I could talk for 10 minutes right now on why Wotan is as good as Wotan is. Yeah. Yeah. Wotan's brilliant. Sentinel! TPS's end boss that rehashes itself into a raid boss. Already points deducted. You've got a floor is lava thing with phase 2. And, I changed my element, so you'll need to change gun at least once. And that's kind of the limit of the redeeming factors, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of the limit of the redeeming factors. It's cool. The arena's far too cramped, especially for phase 2. You got your back to the wall, the entirety of it. There's no... Yeah, I think... Yeah. Valkyries. Valkyries are cool. They've got a little tag team Tera going on. They've got some cool speedrun strats for them. Each one of them has their own little attacks. Each one of them has their own weak point. Valkyries are great. I think that the high B, low A, I think. You could put them in either of those, and really they're right on the line. Yeah, Valkyries are just cool fights. Cool fight, yeah. Yeah, I like the tag team of Valkyries. I think they're just great. That's all of the raid bosses. I don't think I missed any. Doc, no, does not count. Rare Spawn, yes. Raid boss, no. As an actual fight, in terms of raid standard. D, not terrible to fight, mind. Definitely not a bad fight at all, and I would probably rather fight Doc than Dexi. But it's not a raid boss. I'd expect more out of a raid boss. Who else could theoretically? I don't think OMG would ever count. If we counted Eyster, I'd put an insult tier, because that's what Eyster was. They knew what we wanted, and they baited us with Eyster. Insult. But yeah, that's what I've come up with. If you have any thoughts on any of these and why they would go into a different tier, I'd love to hear it. I just love reading things and just passion thoughts on different Borderlands stuff. I love this game, and I love most of these fights. I would even enjoy, the occasional Dexi run, just not as much as the occasional the occasional Wotan run, because Wotan's amazing. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay awesome. I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.